So I was asked to speak about red flags that I've seen in women in my past and chose to ignore and talk about red flags that I didn't realize were red flags. So like there are a few. Like if you encounter a person every day, like on a daily basis, maybe if you're young, you're catching the bus or whatever, you're driving by, and you see this one person, so you kind of like in passing, catch somebody, you see somebody at various times of the day, but they're always like kind of standoffish, always on the phone, or looking at their cell phone, always listening to music. Um, those are not necessarily red flags, but it sends a signal subliminally that they're not really interested in being bothered. Even if they want to be bothered, they tend to. That's the message that comes across. And if the girl is attractive enough, you know, I have ignored that and spoke and said hello and things like that. Most times it doesn't go anywhere. Um, Sometimes a conversation is there's a conversation, um, but very rarely does it ever lead to dating. Um, but say you meet somebody and you've gotten past the initial stage of introduction and you're actually dating someone, getting to really know them as an individual. um, there are some red flags that, especially depends on how attractive this woman is. A lot of times we as men tend to ignore these things to our own detriment. And for instance, I wrote down some. She has this like a demeanor that is kind of angry, has a masculine energy to it. Um, I typically see that mainly in black women, and it's not that they're angry, but they just have this face about them that's not happy. So it can come off as though they're angry. So you gotta ignore that sometimes. Now, sometimes you can get even annoyed if ask them to smile. I used to do that a lot. So, when I was younger, in my early 20s, hey, smile, what's up? You have messed up teeth or something, things like that. And they would smile and things like that, because I made a joke. But um, a lot of that angry demeanor it seems more of a cultural thing than, especially in the African American community, which is where I am all the time now. So. Um, it's something I work with my athletes, my female athletes, about working on their public relations skills. It's very important. If you're in a relationship and she's controlling, wants to know where you're going, who you're going with, when you're coming back, and constantly texting you to see where you are and all that, that's a red flag. In the beginning, it's easy to ignore those things, but it shouldn't be ignored because chances are that's an insecurity issue that you have no control over, and you cannot, in most cases, are not equipped to deal with or even help a woman like that, especially if she's close to you. In a situation like that, she will need to seek counseling from a professional that's not you. Even if you're a professional therapist and that's your profession, you're too close to the situation to even guide her, as far as to help her um, deal with those kind of controlling, low self esteem type issues. Jealousy and stuff can come from that. Um, you sh- I have ignored some of that, because I'm not really, I guess in the beginning, but I'm not really. I guess I'm okay with a needy type girl. It doesn't really affect me the same way it might affect you. Um, but just know it comes with some significantly serious underlying issues that once a relationship gets um, like stronger with time, those type of things can really create some problems for you if you ignore it. If you bring it up and she does go seek help and is working at it, great. If she doesn't, then you really need to step away. You can't ignore such a situation anymore. You got to have some sense of peace in the relationship. If not, why bother being in the relationship at all? Bad manners. Um, Bad manners to me is a reflection on your upbringing. It's as though your parents didn't teach you about good morning, good evening, how things like that. Please, thank you, um, because with the etiquette that comes from good manners, it allows a person to practice being appreciative of the things that people do for them in and around you, including yourself. You all go out on a date. You got people serving, catering to your needs. You go to a restaurant, movie. There are people there saying please and thank you. Is if you ignore things like that, it means several things. At least from my perspective, it could mean that the person isn't well trained, obviously by appearance. So there could be a sense of entitlement that comes with that, depending on the tone in which she speaks when it comes to bad manners. Um, a whole slew of things in that particular that comes from bad manners, particularly that entitlement thing. Um, it also shows a level of education, um, and not that we as men, especially in MGTOW, care about someone that's well educated and has like a career and stuff, but you know, if you as a man are working on yourself to improve the eight healths, you should expect a little more class from the woman you date, because she will become an extension of you. Uh, especially if she represents you at events where for some reason you couldn't make it or something, she's going to be an extension of you. So that level of class needs to be there. If she doesn't have any goals or hobbies, and I'm not talking about like career goals, because again, men typically are not interested in a woman that's career goal oriented, that's has is a career oriented woman, um, especially if we have the means to sustain a woman um, without her having to work. Um, the career thing is not really the interest. Now, say she has goals um, to get in shape if she's a little off, or to improve her diet, um, work on, developing a stronger connection to you as a man. Um, if things are a little rocky, things like that. Um, again, I've mentioned a standalone video, being willing to have a goal of raising the next generation of kids, of course, with your support. Things like that. It's a really tough one with the goals and stuff, but she needs to have some goals. And it doesn't have to be big goals. It doesn't even it could be domestic goals. But what she does need to have is some hobbies. Maybe she likes to read, gardening, something. Maybe go to the gym. Whatever it is, she needs to have some kind of hobbies. If she doesn't have hobbies and you ignore that, then she's always going to be there. And shopping is not really a hobby. That's a dead issue right there. So um, a lot of times shopping is a necessity. And if the shopping is a hobby and she burns money like that, she's irresponsible. That's something you cannot ignore. I have ignored the bad manners, um, uh, and I've never really thought about the hobbies until much later in life. Um, and with the bad manners, it's not the kind of woman I could take home to my mother, you know. And it doesn't really need to go beyond something like that. It's one of those tests, you know. Um, if she has unrealistic expectations, I've encountered, man, a lot of women, and because they're hot, I ignored that. Um, that kind of thing. Ex- so again, these are just suggestions. At the end, I'll give a few that I think that's the most important, that kind of blankets all this, but you will probably see a lot of this. um, like I say, I've dealt with women, and I try to ignore, but I didn't. I end up just going my own way. Is the next one, where she talks a lot about her exes excessively, about all the exes in her life, and here I am trying to talk to you about who you are. You talking about the exes, and I ignored that because she was hot. She was a 10. There was just no, it was easy to ignore that in the beginning, but that put me, I felt my intelligence kicked in, and I felt that within myself that, I was simping out on such a thing. I walked away before it even got off the ground, before I wasted any more time. You cannot ignore that. I don't care how fine a woman is. You got to step away. I mean, this girl is, she's close to 50 now, and she is fine. I mean, she still look good. I still, damn, she's fine. But no, looks alone isn't everything. But looks will allow a lot of us to overlook some things and ignore some things. You can't overlook that. Um, if she's on a rebound, she just got out of a relationship and she's bouncing back kind of too quickly, be careful of that. Again, if she's fine, she's really pretty, it's easy for us to overlook that, put your head on her shoulder type thing. Um, because it's starting off in an unhealthy way. You might be in a good place in yourself, in your life, but she really isn't, from an emotional perspective. And as she comes around to her senses, it can prove destructive to the relationship, because if she's rebounding that fast, it sends up the signal that she can't be alone, and therefore she needs you to be around all the time, you know. And as they get older, if that continues and the relationship continues, it can create some friction later on. So you cannot ignore that. That's something that I ignored, because I didn't think of it as a red flag, and but it truly is. She doesn't have any friends is another one that I've ignored. I've met girls, they're more the nerdy kind, they're in the books and stuff like that. So it's easy to say, well, she's too busy. But to have no girlfriends as well, that's a red flag that I ignored because I didn't know any better. There are eight healths. One of the health is social health. You got to be involved some level of social interaction. Even if it's like cordial, like the work environment. Co-workers go out from time to time, but they're not like buddies. They're good. They're just friendly enough to do such a thing. You know, if she has none of that, be careful with something like that. With the exception of, say, you're messing with a girl that's from a foreign country, she comes to the United States, she obviously don't know anybody. So you'll be the person she'll be around all the time. And as she becomes more comfortable, learn the language, what have you, she might move on and start creating friendships of her own. If she cheated on her ex, and you're getting this information, you're talking, and she's talking about things like that. Um, that's something you can't ignore, especially if you, the person that she cheated on her ex. You gotta be careful with that. People do change; they do find what they want. So that one, you gotta kind of be aware of that one, observe it. You can ignore it, but if it leads down the road to something far worse, you gotta be willing, ready, and able to leave. Um, I have mentioned several times, and these are the ones that I think is like the core for me, that you cannot ignore, that I do not ignore, that I have in the past when I was younger and being retarded. All right, I was a simp. Let's put it that way. I had that simp mindset because I had really no serious guidance for that. And plus, I was in a space where, yes, I was good looking and all that, but my temperament and whatnot, I was a simp, just plain and simple. Disrespect. All right, I've had a girl disrespect me, and instead of like walking away, uh, we went to this party. I took her to this party. We were cool because she was fine as hell. Real pretty girl. Probably 7, maybe 8, and she went with me to this event, and didn't once dance with me. She danced really seductively with another guy, who caught the bus to go home, and it was over, and I took her home in my car. Right? So obviously our relationship didn't work out. It never got off the ground, but I ignored that when what I should have done. And if you encounter something like that, because that's a level of disrespect, you're not really who she's interested in anyway, is jump in your whip and get the hell out, or you enjoy yourself, you pick up somebody else, you hang out, you have a good time, and just leave when it's time. Leave early before she goes, so you don't have an argument, with her. Just leave. So that's something that I ignored, and it was hurtful. So you don't want to get in a situation like that. As I got older, um, another one that I kind of ignored is the rejections. Until the same women come back years later to ask me out, or say, oh, if I'm interested in them and stuff like that, where I no longer am. In my mid 20s, I've encountered some of those where I was rejected, obviously, for some of the dumbest reasons under the planet. As I got older, I realized they weren't into me then, but they started reaching that, the mid, they're like 27, 28 years old. And obviously, I was that good guy, but before that, I was a nice guy. But I leveled myself up and became a good guy, and some of the niceness went away. Um, I One of the red flags that I didn't know was a red flag at the time is when they started approaching me as though they were interested in being in a relationship with me. Fortunately for me, I did not. I was in the military at the time, and I was doing some other things, so I kind of ignored the relationship, being involved in a relationship. I was more interested in the one night stand type thing at that time, I think. Yeah. So I wasn't really looking for relationships. And besides, a lot of these women had kids, so it was a turn off for me. But, because it was a turn off for me, I didn't fall in that trap. But it wasn't a red flag to me until much later, in my early 30s and late 30s, when I really start having some shit: my house, my cars, my career, the lifestyle that I have, because I've had this lifestyle for about 15 years or so. Um, that's when I started paying attention to to that kind of red flag of women who didn't want me when I was younger, now want me, but my market value is much higher. I don't need those women at all. So that's the other one. The last one, and this is one that you really should not ignore at all. If she presents herself as a liability, that's the kind of girl you don't want to have around you. If she's wasting your time and your money, those are the kind of girls you should completely ignore. She dragging you along, 2, 3, maybe 5 dates, on you, and you ignoring that shit. You're just dumb. Uh, that's just a dumb mindset. The first 2 dates, the second date, you should be talking about what they expect, what you expect, what she expects from the relationship. All right, instead of you just burning money, not knowing where it's going. Don't do that. You cannot ignore that. She bringing up her bills and all that stuff where it isn't warranted at all. You cannot under any circumstances ignore that, and you should not even dip in your pocket to even help her with such a thing. Now, if she asks you for guidance on how to address some of that stuff, you can do that. But when you start dipping in your own pocket, that's a problem. You got to ignore that. You cannot ignore that at all. So, and so the other one is more for bonus type one. She's a party girl. She's a good time girl, which means she's out and about. You all go into clubs and stuff, but she knows, like, every club you go to, she knows all the bartenders, the bouncers, all these people. And she has a high body count. Man, you can ignore it. I mean, if you're that confident, you have that level of confidence as a man, but a lot of times that comes back in a way um, that's kind of negative, and especially if you're older and she's still living that, being that good time girl. That's a selfish approach. That's not the type of person you want to have to build a relationship with. Or you can have some friend with benefit type thing, but you cannot ignore that. Well, hopefully this video is helpful. Like, subscribe, share it if you think it will help someone. I have spoken about these things before in other videos, so go ahead and look at the other videos to get a little more insight and probably a different perspective. I really don't want to have to to regurgitate the same information over and over again in a different way, because it's not going to be beneficial to you guys. I mean, it might sink in more if you hear it over and over again, because if you look at the Bible, it says faith cometh by hearing, and hearing the word over and over again. Somewhere in the New Testament, I can't remember, Galatians or somewhere. So if you hear it over and over again, it's good. I don't mind repeating it, but I don't want to repeat it too many times where it becomes overbearing. And so I recommend you go back and look at my videos, and you'll find that a lot of these things I've talked about, either in passing or in some detail. Y'all have a good day.